And now the curtain has gone up on another unique attraction, ska music.
Pick it up. Back then, it was like the people that liked the music loved the music.
You got lucky. You're in the right place at the right time. Holy sh**.
Ska music? Do you know anything about ska music?
Ska music? Never heard of it.
This is so different and so weird, and my parents are gonna hate it.
Anything goes.
I remember just going, what is this?
Wow, there's music out there where it just makes me feel positive, it makes me feel good.
If I could define a music for the mid-90s, it was ska punk.
The world was ready for fun music. Everything ska was moving off the shelf.
This is bigger than our little thing. This is something next level.
All of a sudden, new metal was cool, and ska not cool. Like 99, it was like, nobody went to ska shows.
This is terrible.
The way it exploded is the way it died. It was like one day it was all bad, then it was gone.
The great thing about ska is that, like punk rock, there's always going to be a subculture for what we do.
Ska equates to unity to me. That's what I loved about it, because you had black, white, Mexican, Asian. Nobody was against anyone for that moment in time. Man, I'll tell you, music needs more of that. Music needs more of that. This world needs more of that.
Up. Ska in the 90s.
Clever and energetic. I don't think I can keep up with them.
That's good music, though.
Toe tap.
Well, hello there. Welcome to another episode of Ska Talk with Mr. Kingpin. And today with us... Oh, I lost myself. Sorry. Today with us, we have Taylor Morden.
Hello.
He is the director of such movies as The Last Blockbuster and Ska Movie, which that's why we're all here for the Ska Movie. Give me 1 second because I lost my video. Of course, because, you know, that's how it works when I go live. Okay, now we're back. So
we're back.
Thanks for joining me today with the Ska Talk. But today is going to be Ska Talk Plus, because
Ska Talk Plus.
Ska Talk Plus, because you have a lot of
football.
You got a lot of cool stuff going on. So. Hold on 1 second. Okay. Today's the day of, you there? Okay. Today's the day of technical difficulties for some reason. Okay. We got it all sorted out. I unfroze and then you froze. I was like, I just had to keep moving stuff around. All right. So, sorry about that awkward intro, but Taylor, thank you for joining us tonight. Looking forward to kind of digging in to not just the Ska Movie, but all the very cool projects that you've been a part of. Both musical and movie related.
Okay.
So we'll start off at the beginning.
Okay. Well, I was born on a cold February morning in 1900 and something. None of that is true.
No.
It was the middle of the day in September, but where do you actually want to start?
Well, first of all, let us start with how you got into ska. Like, what was kind of like the scene like when you were coming up into ska, and what were the bands that hooked you?
Yeah, no problem. So I grew up splitting my time between Oregon and San Francisco, and in San Francisco, you know, I was a little kid in the 80s, and I was listening to like Boys to Men and Criss Cross and MC Hammer.
Same.
Vanilla Ice, as was the style at the time. And then like also Megadeth and Poison and Metallica.
Yep.
And nothing in between. It was like R&B and hair metal. And I moved up to Oregon when I was in 8th grade. So this was the mid 90s, early 90s. And still listening to nonsense music. I played trumpet in the school band and loved doing that, but we were, you know, playing jazz and at the basketball games. But I went to a very, very small school in kind of the middle of nowhere. There were only 16 people in my graduating class.
Whoa.
So very, very small. And so like the school band, I was the only trumpet player, and I was, you know, the lead trumpet, but I was also like the lead instrument, and I just played all the melodies all the time. So that
you were first chair.
I was all the chairs, but I didn't get exposed to anything. You know, this was Oregon. People were listening to the same Boys to Men stuff, and grunge was happening. People were listening to Nirvana and Weezer, and I was into that. And I remember this kid named Ryan Rook. He moved up to this tiny, tiny school. I think he moved up from San Diego. And where we lived, we rode the school bus. It was about 45 minutes to get to school every morning and to get home, because we were in the middle of nowhere. So people were bussed in from an hour in every direction just to get 16 people in the school. But he and I were the same age, and we rode the school bus, and we would like trade cassettes for our Walkmans to listen on the school bus. And he came up from San Diego. He was listening to Blink before they were 182, and like No Effects and Lagwagon, and like I was blowing my mind, all this punk rock stuff. And he would have, you know, some of those bands would have like one ska song on there, you know, early Rancid, and like Offspring would have a ska track on their cassette or a mix or whatever. And that was like my first exposure to punk rock, which I loved. I was done with Boys to Men, and I was done with Megadeth at that point. I was just like faster, angrier, whatever. And then he had some friends that went to a different school. It was a Christian school at the church nearby, because, you know.
I know where you're going with this.
Yeah, small towns. Yeah. So I would do the same thing. They would have to come to our school for some reason, like once a month or once a week. There was like a thing the state required. So they came to regular school. And I remember sitting in science class next to one of these kids, and I kind of knew them from like, they kind of played in a punk rock band, and we all hung out, and they skateboarded, and I couldn't skateboard, but I would take pictures of the skateboarding and all that. And we were doing the thing at this point. I think it was probably still cassettes, but we were trading music back and forth, and I had accumulated some better music by that time, but it was still like Nirvana, Weezer, and whatever. And I was flipping through, and they had this one that just sounded cool called 5 Iron Frenzy. And I, you know, was listening to NoFX and Blink and Lagwagon and all that. And the first time I remember the first song on that record, that first 5 Iron record that my Christian friend let me listen to, it was like the punk rock I had been listening to, but it had trumpets, and that was it. Like, I asked him, are there more bands like this? What is going on? How do I find this? And he said, oh, well, they're playing at the church next month. Do you want to come? And I went, and it was, you know, a ska show is what it is. It's amazing. It's life-changing. And within a month I had gone down to the record store, and I couldn't afford a lot. I didn't have a lot of money. So I would get like the $4 compilations that would have a bunch of bands on them and pick those up. And I remember I got the Buck-09 album because it said ska, but it was like $7 at the CD store. It was like way cheaper than everything else. So I had that one, and then I would make tapes of my friends' CDs, and it just kind of grew from there. And then like a year later, I saw an ad or a flyer at the time that there was a local ska band that needed a trumpet player. I was a trumpet player, and I was like, I'm in. Where do I sign up? And I went and auditioned, and I think that the guys were very cool, and I was not like a great musician, but I thought I was, because I was the first chair at my tiny school. But I had a lot of energy, and I was like a punk rock kid, and they had only been trying out like these school band jazz people who were great musicians, but wrong for ska punk stage shows. And they didn't let me in the band, but they had a show coming up, and they said, this doesn't mean you're in the band, but we need somebody to fill in for this show next weekend. So can you learn the rest of our set and come play this show? And that show was opening for the Mad Caddies at like the coolest rock club in town. I had no idea. That was my first ever time on a stage at all. And I guess I did well enough. They let me stay in the band, and then I played in a bunch of other bands, and it's just been a huge part of my life ever since.
That's awesome. Did you even know who the Mad Caddies were when you did the show?
No, I had no idea. They weren't in my, like, I had probably at that point been listening to the Boss Tones, Real Big Fish, Five Iron Frenzy, Buck-09, and Save Ferris or something. Like, I probably had the Rancid Out Come the Wolves.
Yeah.
But I had never heard the Mad Caddies until I saw them live playing right after I got off stage playing my first show. It was mind blowing.
It's funny how similar our stories are. Except for the horn part. I don't play horn, but
what do you play?
I'm a singer and guitar player. So, but yeah, that's same thing in school. Just I got introduced to punk rock, and at the same time I got introduced to Operation Ivy, and just kind of that same track,
Yeah. I missed out on the Operation Ivy of it all until much later, and that was a huge bummer. Like, it was probably 5 years later when somebody was like, "Oh, you like Rancid? You're gonna love this."
So, yeah, I mean, just like so many people, we all kind of got into ska with the third wave, and that late 80s or early 90s. I mean, it just, no matter where we all ended up in the end, like now, we all got hooked on all those bands. For me, it was Less Than Jake was the one that was like, that really hooked me.
They really stuck out to me too. It was definitely like after I had started playing in bands, and that was another one where it was weird. I remember getting Hello Rockview the day it came out, and then working backwards.
Oh,
that was that was my first Less Than Jake record, and then, oh my God, these guys have more. I want all of it,
And I used to do that same thing, where if an album just said it was ska, I would just get it.
Like in the section. Well, and they also used to have listening stations at the record stores. So you'd go in, and I would go and I would look like on the back of the CD. Sometimes it would have a picture of the band, and if there was a lot of people, I could assume, or horn players are usually holding horns on the back of a ska album, or it would say what instruments. I was a sucker for a horn section, so if a band had a horn section, I was going to get that album.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
If it was in the punk section but had horns, that was my,
I was super fortunate because we had a local record store, Bill's Records in Dallas, and so they had made a ska section. It was like It was like the uncorporate you know, sole proprietor music store. So
Yeah.
it was real easy for me. I would pop in like once a week and see if there was something I didn't have. A lot of compilations, right? All those early, like California Ska Quake, all the Ska Armageddon ones, and
yeah, and then I didn't have really access to that because I lived so far out of, Eugene, Oregon was the big city, but it was an hour away, and I had to take the bus most of the time. So I would just go to the mall, and Sam Goody would have the Goldfinger record, and that's it. Or I think Hello Rockview was the only Less Than Jake that ever popped up there. So I had that, and then most of the rest of my collection was either I bought it at a show that I was playing, like we were the opening band and I got the CDs from the bands, or just taped from my friends. So I had all these tapes and like wouldn't have the names of the songs. It would just say like Less Than Jake first album. It'd be that cassette that would just live in my Walkman for a while.
Yep. I had that's the first one I got was taped from somebody, and it was the demo. So it was before the first album. So it was like early versions of some of those songs that were on the first album. So awesome. So obviously you had a super soft spot for ska, but then of course, your career path is in the movie industry. So
sure, you could call it a career path, but yeah, it's what I do.
It's what you do. Well, I guess it's what you do, right? It's your passion, I'm sure. So how do these two intersect for you?
I was in high school. I was the kid with the video camera on my shoulder walking around because the school had this bulky VHS camcorder that you could borrow. And so I would mess around with that. But music was really my focus for my whole life. And I didn't really, my goal, like all through college and all through my 20s, was to like work just enough to pay my bills so that I could play in bands and go on tour and do music. Right. That's what I wanted to do. And, so much so like I would just put all my stuff in storage for the summers and not have rent so that I could go on tour. So I didn't have jobs so much. It was more like selling pirated DVDs on eBay and stuff like that. Just trying to make a couple bucks. I was like a web developer for a long time because I knew HTML.
That's back in the easy days.
Yeah, and then I was a Flash animator right out of college, and for a long time I did Flash animations and Flash intros on websites. You remember how you used to have to skip the intro? Yeah, that was my fault. And so I did that.
ActionScript, I remember.
Yeah, I was pretty good at ActionScript, and I did that while playing in bands for like a decade. And then Apple killed Flash. They said they weren't going to support it on these newfangled iPhones and iPads and all that. Yeah. And it went away really quickly, and I didn't have a job. And so that was about the same time that like DSLR cameras were getting good and affordable, and you could shoot pretty good looking video. And I had always kind of dabbled in music videos for bands I was in or for friends' bands and things like that. Because I was a pretty good editor. Like I didn't own a camera, or I wasn't, doing production, but I could edit. So if we could borrow a camera, we could make a music video.
Right.
And that's really, once Flash went away, I bought a DSLR and tried to figure out if I could make a few bucks, find another band that needed a music video, do that. And then you do enough of those, and the people who play in these bands, they also have day jobs, and the day job needs a commercial or corporate stuff. And I shot a bunch of weddings and real estate and just all the stuff you can do to try to make money doing video work. And I was living in Washington, D.C. at the time. So there was a lot to do, there's a lot of weddings, a lot of real estate, a lot of corporate videos So I
you
did
really
that.
like cut your teeth on all the corporate gigs.
Exactly.
And learning the
I did
craft
for 2 years. And then when I moved back to Oregon 6 years ago now, we moved to Bend, which is a pretty small town, and it didn't have work for me. There wasn't, there was a little bit of commercial work, and there were already like 5 companies there doing it, and they didn't need my help. So I just had all this time on my hands. I had all this equipment I had built up, and I thought maybe I could make a documentary. I think I know how, and it's just like an hour and a half version of these 3-minute corporate videos I've been making. So I asked my wife if I could try that instead of getting a job. And I had saved up enough money to do that for a little while. And she gave me 1 year. She said, you can try to make movies for 1 year. And if it doesn't pan out, then go get a job. And that was 6 years ago. And I never had to get a job.
Sweet. And now that is your job.
Yeah, it's kind of like a job.
But it doesn't feel like work, right?
It doesn't, and it often doesn't pay anything. But every once in a while it does, just enough to keep me from applying at Best Buy.
Ska Bill says hi. What's up, Taylor? What's up, John? Ooh. Ska Bill.
Oh, Ska Bill. Okay.
He's out in the Midwest.
Nice.
So he's saying hello. So, I mean, you have several credits that you've been doing all these years. So you've been pretty busy making documentaries and shorts, and pretty cool. Obviously, the one we're going to talk about right now, though, is the ska movie. Because at some point, your love of ska and you're making movies, you just figured out this was like the perfect subject matter to dive into.
I'd finished my first movie, and it had just premiered at a film festival, and I had just got the bug of like, oh, this is something I might be able to do. And I posted on Facebook, like, what should my next movie be about? And a good friend of mine who was also the bass player in one of my more successful ska bands, he was like, ska, obviously. Like, obviously, you make movies and you've also played in ska bands for, at that point, 20 plus years. Like, if you don't do it, who's going to do it? Like, just do it. And the movie I had done before was about one band. So it was very contained,
okay.
And approached that. So I was a little bit like, I don't know, that's a pretty big, ska is so big. And then it kind of evolved into like, okay, how about just 90s ska? Because that's like my wheelhouse. Like, I'm not qualified to talk about Jamaican ska or two-tone even.
Right.
But I lived and breathed third wave ska for a long time and still do. And I said, okay, well, if we can narrow it down to that, I think I can do that, but you're going to have to do it with me. And he doesn't do movies. He's a musician. He does music full time, but I made him be a producer on the movie because I couldn't do it by myself. And that's how that came about. That was like, I think that Facebook post was in October of 2017.
Wow.
And we shot the first footage with the Voodoo Glow Skulls in November of that year.
And that's what was the process of just kind of like roping all these bands into this?
Well, it was a variety. So between Ray is the producer and my old bass player, Ray and I, we know people, we'd still been playing in bands. So we had some connections. I had been playing in DC, so I knew the Pie Tasters guys, and, he'd been playing in Japan. He knew all the Japanese people, and he was tight with Angelo from Fishbone and T-Bone from Safe Ferris, and at that time Starpool, but now Bite Me Bambi.
Yep.
And so we knew, like, enough people to kind of get started. And then through friends of friends, how the ska community is, if you know Steve from the Pie Tasters, he knows everybody. And if you know, the Star Pool guys, they know everybody down there, and it kind of just spread out. So the first week, what we did is we just took what we knew, and we were both in Oregon, and we just went down to Southern California to start filming. We loaded up the cameras and everything, and we had a little bit of a plan. We had reached out to a few people online, and no budget, no anything. We were sleeping on people's couches and floors, just like when we were on tour. And we went around and filmed the first handful of interviews, which was Angelo from Fishbone, Brian and Brian from Save Ferris, John from Buck-O-Nine, and what else did we do? Oh, we came back up through San Francisco, and we stopped with Mike Park and Karina from Dancehall Crashers. And we kind of did all that, and we were following the Toasters on their tour, trying to meet up with Bucket for that whole first week. So they were in San Diego, and we're like, all right, we'll come to San Diego. And he's like, oh, not today. It was no good. They were in LA. Okay, we're in LA. No, it's not going to work. They're in the Bay Area. We're in the Bay Area. Nah, let's do it another day. And went all the way up the coast.
Oh, Bucket.
Until we were back in Oregon, like where we live, and we didn't even have to go anywhere. And we ended up like on their last West Coast day in Portland. He was like, okay, fine, we can sit down and do this interview. But that was what that first week was. And then once we had that, I think a lot of it was Angelo, because everybody respects Fishbone so much that we were then like, had some legitimacy, we're like, this is a real project.
Right.
And, we have this credibility of like all these, Mike Park is on board, and the Dancehall Crashers are in it. Nobody's put them in anything for so long. So that was really the start of it. And then from there, we had just enough footage to put together the Kickstarter, raise some money, and then go to the East Coast and go and film and flesh it out.
Okay. So around the time of the Kickstarter, you were about halfway through already getting interviews on your coast.
Yeah, we had done a lot of West Coast.
Okay. Oh, that's cool. But yeah,
I could do that for very cheap. We didn't need, it was gas money, you know?
Very cool. But yeah, like you're saying, once you're able to tell a band when you're trying to rope them in, oh yeah, we've already talked to this band and that band, and we got them, and they're like, oh, then it goes from you asking them to they got to be in this.
Right. At a certain point, that did start to happen where, we would approach people and they had already heard about it from somebody else, or, like by the time I met Tim Armstrong to ask him to be a part of it, he had heard about it from like 5 people.
So he was waiting on the call.
Yeah. He was waiting to tell me that he didn't want to be on camera, but would consider doing voiceover work.
Oh, well, you did a good job.
Yeah.
I noticed in the credits, Heather Augustus wrote the movie.
Yeah.
So did she, I guess, just fill in all the backstory, or did she actually was writing like all the dialogue for Tim and the whole thing, right?
She wrote all of the voiceover. So anything Tim Armstrong says, she wrote the script, which is really all the history and all the connecting, tissue throughout. And then also, we had interviewed her for the movie because she's a bit of an expert, and we value her input. But then at the end of the interview, I was like, no, we just need your help on this project. We don't know enough to present the holistic ska picture, but you do. So we need you to come on board. And so what she did is she would watch our early edits and tell us like, oh no, that's wrong, and you have to change this, and you can't leave that in because that's not correct. And and things like that. And that was a huge help in addition to writing all the voiceover bits.
Oh, that's really cool. Yeah, you got the right person, that's for sure. I got to interview her last year for Supernova. Last year we were doing the Supernova Saturdays, and it was much like this. And she's just like an infinite wealth of knowledge, especially about the Jamaican ska. And but that's a good perspective to have too. Now, I just lost my train of thought here. So you had Heather writing. Oh, the animation. That's what I was thinking about too. I love the little animated bits in the movie. Yeah. They were pretty cool. Was that?
Yeah, that stuff was all. We had a great animator named Sarah Schmidt, and I had gone on, I forget which website, but I was looking at animation portfolios and picking them out. And I had narrowed it down to, I think, 5 different animators that were all cool styles that I thought would fit. And I was reading through their profiles to be like, who are these people? You know,
right.
That's cool that they do cool animation, but it would be great if somebody like listened to ska or knew anything about even punk rock or like tangentially, you know, a reggae fan, whatever, but just not like a person who hates music. So I was reading through their bios and hers, it was like a 2-sentence bio, and it said something like, just a lonely saxophone player patiently awaiting the 4th wave of ska.
Oh, wow.
And I never contacted any of the other 4 people. It was always her the whole time. And that's how we found her. But I didn't, not like I searched everybody's profiles for ska. I had already picked out animators I liked, and then her profile happened to be ska related. And so she was very excited to like get to animate ska bands.
Well, I mean, that's like the perfect thing about that is the commitment level, right? And, you know, I'm sure she put a lot of extra love into it.
You know, it was a big chunk of our budget, but she definitely did a lot more work than what we paid her for.
It was awesome. It was a cool touch. It reminded me of the Fishbone documentary, Everyday Sunshine. They kind of incorporated that same kind of thing. It was really cool. And I noticed you went to some festivals to get some of these interviews.
Yeah, that was a clever money-saving technique of, if all these bands are going to be in the same place, then we'll go to that place. So we did the Back to the Beach Festival in 2018 and the Supernova Festival. And between those 2 lineups, gosh, we knocked out half the bands, something like that. It was a lot because those were stacked lineups.
Yeah, they were.
And we had reached out also to Leonore from Five Iron Frenzy at the very beginning, because this was one of the people that I knew. Like, we were Facebook friends, and she doesn't remember me, but we opened for them a lot, and I remember them. And I asked her if she would be in the movie. And then as it kind of became more real, we asked her if she would come on board as another producer, because producer can mean literally anything on a movie, especially an indie movie. And her main job was like connecting, like at Back to the Beach in particular, just, you know, she knows, she's toured with all these bands. If she goes and knocks on their trailer door, they're going to be like, hey, what's up? If I do, I can't even get to the door, you know? So that was really helpful to have somebody, you know, who knew a lot of these people to make those introductions and help facilitate the interview process. Because it's also hard. We went to the festivals because all the bands would be in one place, and it's, you know, mustard plug. I'm not going to fly to Grand Rapids, Michigan. I mean, we would have, but it was a whole lot easier not to.
Right.
Less than Jake was there and saved us a trip to Florida, things like that. But it ended up being more difficult because they didn't have extra free time. They had flown in to play this festival. A lot of these people are doing like guest spots with another band in 15 minutes. And then you gotta,
oh geez.
So we got an Airbnb right next to the festival that we could just shuttle people back and forth. But even that, it was, I don't know if it was more beneficial or more difficult to film at the festival, but all the concert footage was cool.
It was very cool. I wish I had gone to that Supernova. I missed that one, but I know they had, it was like the epic rains. Did you stay for the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was epic rains. You can hear in our Jay Navarro interviews, there's like thunder and lightning happening.
Oh,
we tried to filter it out, but like a lot of that was just crazy thunderstorms.
So everybody in the chat, let us know if you've seen Pick It Up, Ska in the 90s, and let us know your thoughts or any comments. We got a couple. Tedford is saying that those were so good. He's talking about the animations.
Oh, yeah.
Ska Bill is out of Minneapolis. Jeremy Pena from the Bandulus, he is asking, is there any place for ska shows in Bend nowadays?
So there's one cool venue called the Volcanic Theater, and I think that they just opened back up. I lived there for 5 years. I just moved back to Eugene, which there's lots of cool places to play in Eugene. But when I lived there, over the course of 5 years, there was one Voodoo Glow Skull show. And either the rest of the ska shows were not marketed to me, or I was out of town or something, but there was not. No, there were not any shows, and there were not cool places. But I love the Volcanic Theater and would have loved to have seen ska shows there. It's just got a cool vibe. So if you're booking a tour, you might stop, but I don't know that there's ska fans there. So
yeah, well, Jeremy says that the Steady 45s and Mata Mosca have played there.
Oh yeah,
so
missed it.
Well, there you go. Tedford also remembers when we were talking about how we would discover ska back in the day, that Sam Goody
yeah
would stock all the Scotalites and Studio One stuff.
Right.
There was a time when the big chains got on board and there was ska sections in the.
Yeah, there was a time.
It was very brief window.
It was very brief, and I didn't. God, to be a teenager and like save up all your money for CDs and have to pick, and CDs were expensive, and you could. I was never quite good enough at shoplifting to pull off compact discs.
That's what the compilations were like. You brought out in the movie. Like nobody had enough money to buy all these bands, let alone find out about all these bands back then.
Yeah.
But in a compilation, you had like 30 tracks with all these.
Huge.
Yeah.
And then also, for me, I mean, a lot of my 90s record collection came from like Columbia House or BMG, like 12 CDs for a penny, but they would sometimes have the Boss Tones. I think I got my No Doubt records from them. Like even the first No Doubt, after Tragic Kingdom hit, they went back and had the self-titled
Beacon Street. Yeah.
Beacon Street. Yeah. And Rancid. And like, there were a few thing, but I remember it being so hard to find 12 things that I wanted from Columbia House. Like, I really want these two Boss Tones records that they have for a penny. I guess I need 10 more things. I don't know.
Yeah, it's funny. Tedford said that comps were like the Spotify of the 90s.
Yeah. And mixtapes. Like my friends and I would make each other mixtapes of like, you got this song and this one and this one.
That's
but
right.
Like I said, they wouldn't be labeled correct. Like I don't know what bands I was listening to. It was just music I liked.
Yeah, there. He also mentions it's to Pick It Up is fantastic. Taylor and company tell a great story that flows really well. I echo that sentiment. It's engaging and entertaining even for people who aren't fanatics.
That was really the goal, because you can make a boring history of ska for any city in the world, and the people who love ska there are going to watch it and love it.
Yeah.
But the trick is getting through to the normals, right? The people who have never been to a ska show, the people who made fun of us in the 90s for listening to ska, who were listening to Limp Bizkit and all that. And I think the greatest compliment we got, I don't remember, it was at a festival or someplace after the movie had been out for a little bit. And it was somebody, I don't remember who, I wish I did for the quote, but it was somebody from like an emo band from the early 2000s who said, I used to make fun of people who listen to ska, and after I saw your movie, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm like, great. That was the goal. And then also, like, after the premiere in Orange County, Aaron from Real Big Fish was there, and we had a second showing a few days later, and he brought his mom, and he said, I've been trying to explain to my mom for years what it is that I do, and this movie is the perfect way to do that. So that was, but it's like you say, if it can appeal to regular people and they can learn a little bit about this thing that we all love, we're like in it.
Yeah.
Then it becomes this useful tool of like, oh, you've got a friend who doesn't know anything about ska. Well, you can show them this and they're going to learn some of it. You're not going to, it's impossible to put everything in there, but it's a pretty good primer. And if you watch the movie and you come away going like, I don't think I like that music, you probably don't like that music.
Yeah, that movie is definitely a hook for ska. Like, you're going to come out of there a ska fan, I think, after watching that movie.
I hope so.
Or not. Like,
yeah, or you're going to hate it more, and that's fine, but you will have learned a few things.
Right.
Like why it matters to other people. But the other thing it does that's been really great is it connects to people who forgot about ska, who listened to it for like 1 year in 1998, and they were kind of into it, and then they were into Limp Bizkit and Korn, and then they were into, Newfound Glory and My Chemical Romance, and they forgot about ska. And then I hear from people who watch the movie, and like, then I just put on ska playlists on Spotify and danced all weekend. I'm like, that's, or better yet, they started going to ska shows after the movie was like, hey, ska never went away and there's still shows you can go to. And then people went, and that's,
I can't tell you how many times I've talked to somebody who's like, oh yeah, I used to listen to ska. And then I'll tell them like all the shows that are still like the tours that come through, and they're like, really? Oh my God, I haven't seen them in forever. I'm like, yeah, they come like twice a year.
Yeah.
That's a great byproduct of that movie. But you really nailed the other thing I think that you really nailed was like the excitement, even for us that have been into ska and never left it. But just that feeling of excitement, hearing the story of how everything rose up, and then you just dropped a bomb on us halfway through that movie.
Well, that's what happened,
Yeah. And I remember we saw it at the Alamo Draft House when it came through in Dallas. And I remember just feeling that pit at that feeling in the pit of my stomach when the story started talking about the decline. I was like, oh yeah, I totally remember this. Like, swing kind of took over for a minute, and then ska was gone from the mainstream.
Yeah, it was hard. I mean, from my point of view, playing in ska bands, like I started in '98, so it was great for like a year, and then it really started, like you said, it wasn't cool anymore, and that I had just gotten there. Like I just started, and it was still cool to me. And a lot of bands never stopped playing. There were still shows, because it was still like it crashed from being like the hottest thing, but it was still like pretty mainstream. Like ska bands were still pulling 300 people at the local club, at the local show for years, like till the 2004, 2005, something like that, at least around here.
Right.
And so it was cool, but I really felt like I missed out on the party a little bit of like, oh, I just got here. Like I kind of joined during the peak, and then it all kind of slipped away. But what we did is, we were here in Eugene, Oregon, where the scene was awesome and then wasn't. But we started playing in Japan, and they were kind of on a delay. Like it was still very, very cool there for 3 or 4 more years. So we would play, clubs here for 30, 40 people, still fun, still something to do. And then we go to Japan and play these huge festivals and open for these huge bands and tour. And we were on MTV over there, and we were doing the thing. Then we come back to the States and play for 20, 30 people again.
Wow. Well, we're gonna jump back. There's some questions in the chat regarding that, but I'm going to transition to your next big project that is fantastic and everybody needs to see it. I'm sure many of you have, and that is The Last Blockbuster. That's on Netflix. Oh, someone asked where you could see the ska movie. You want to tell them?
Yeah, you can get it on Amazon Prime. I think it's on Vimeo. But if you go to skamovie.com, there's links to every place you can get it, and you can order it on DVD or Blu-ray, and I'll ship it out of my garage to you. That's a thing I do.
Hey, it's just like Mike Park. He's still working out of the garage.
I never outgrew the DIY music thing. Like that's why we make posters, we make T-shirts and hats and stickers and buttons, and
that's awesome.
I don't know, making a movie about bands is kind of like being in a band. Like I don't have a new record to sell, but I have a DVD.
Yep. So now we're moving forward, and you did a fantastic biography or documentary, I should say, about this blockbuster that's out there in your neck of the woods, and it's the last one on the earth. It used to be the second to last one. I think there was one in Alaska, right? And then that one.
Yeah, when we started making that movie, there were 12 left.
Oh. So what was the original concept about the 12? And then you had to like change it up?
Yeah, we pivoted. Originally, I thought, when I found out there were 12, I thought, oh, maybe I can go to all 12 and we'll see like what are these towns that they're in, who are the people that are still renting DVDs, what is that? And it was at the same time as the ska movie. I was filming both concurrently.
Oh, wow.
And what happened was I would reach out to these other blockbusters. There were some in Texas, 3 in Oregon, and the rest were in Alaska. And we would like reach out and say, okay, can we come, at the end of April and film at your blockbuster? And they would say, that sounds great, except we're closing at the beginning of April. They would be closing right as we were reaching out. And we kind of saw this pattern of Like this is happening now. They're all closing, and one of these 12 is going to end up being the last one. And it was just dumb luck that it happened to be the one that we had already been filming at, that was in Bend, Oregon, where I lived at the time.
Yeah. And it's so good because you did a great job of helping us get invested in the people that work there. That was one of my big takeaways when I watched the movie. It's like I was really rooting for that family to keep the blockbuster going.
That's what we were hoping. You know, when we met Sandy and her family who run that store, it became very obvious that, you know, she's such a lovable character. This is about her. This is her story. And then when we learned from all the people around her that she really is the driving force that keeps that place open, and that's the reason, because that's the big question going into it, and the one everybody asks is why? Why are they still open? You know, they're all closed. There were 9,000 of these things. 8,999 of them are gone. Why is this one special? And she's the answer. Mm-hmm. And the owners, they told us if it wasn't for her, they would have closed years ago. So that really told us as storytellers, like, this is her story. It just happens to also be about Blockbuster Video.
Yeah, I mean, she was like basically kind of like a mother figure, providing jobs for all these, teens and stuff. There's a comment here, the Blockbuster, and this is addressed in the movie, so definitely go check it out on Netflix. And I know there's other places you can see it too, but Stephen Carlisle mentioned that Blockbuster actually turned down the chance to acquire Netflix early on.
Yeah, that's
my jaw dropped when I saw that. Like, yeah. I learned so much about the behind the scenes with this movie, but could you imagine? And they were competing for the streaming. I mean, for the sending the discs, because I remember I was like loyal to Blockbuster, so I did the Blockbuster DVDs instead of Netflix.
And it was better because you could take those into the store to return them instead of mailing them back. And they would sometimes, some of the places, you could take them in and exchange them for another movie from the store. So like I had the monthly Blockbuster subscription for a while at the peak, and the mail thing, because they would have different movies and like more movies. And so you could go with your monthly, you could have one movie out at a time from the store, unlimited. And there was a time in like 2005 or 6 when I had that subscription, and I lived across the street from Blockbuster. So I would go and like swap out 4 times a day. And I would also like figured out how to copy a DVD, pirate them illegally. So I would just take it, and then however long it took to make a backup copy, and then go get another movie. It'd be like, you've only had this movie out for an hour. You couldn't have watched it.
Sadly, I used to do that too. It was like a very long 4-step process.
Right.
And I still have my spindle. I literally still have my spindle of movies.
I still have binders of all these and they would reduce the quality when you would copy them because the DVD-Rs weren't as big as commercial DVDs. So you'd have these like low quality backups of like American Pie 2 or whatever the stupid. I would just get every movie.
On Flux. Yeah, it's just at a certain point, you just grab whatever you can and make a copy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, if you guys haven't already, go check that out. You guys can go to popmotionpictures.com, I'm sure, for all the links on how to see that one as well. But Netflix, easiest. The irony, huh?
Yeah.
You haven't heard that one before, right?
No, that hasn't come up. What's weird about a movie about Blockbuster being on Netflix? That seems normal to me.
I'm sure that's why they took it, right? They couldn't pass up the irony alone.
It down at first. They passed on it, and then a week later we got a call saying, I think the buyer was like, I had a dream, and we have to put this movie out. It's too good.
Really?
Too funny. Yeah. So somebody at Netflix has a pretty good sense of humor about the whole thing.
That's cool. Another project that you did that I'm sure a lot of people might have heard about it was Project 88. Explain to us Project 88.
Yeah, Project 88 was over a year ago now when the pandemic first hit and we were all locked at home. You know, everybody was like quarantining. We were wiping down our bananas with rubbing alcohol, and you couldn't get toilet paper, and the world was crazy. The world is still crazy, but we've learned a little bit about it since then.
See, the trick the trick is to use the banana peel as the toilet paper. Okay, continue.
Oh, this is good. This is a pro tip. But we didn't know how long it was going to last or what it was. We all thought, maybe a couple of months tops, and then things will get back to normal. So a lot of filmmaker friends of mine, all of a sudden we couldn't go work. We couldn't do what we wanted to do, which is make movies. And we were trying to figure out how to do a project together, but all quarantined in our houses. And we came up with this idea to let's all shoot little portions of a movie and then we'll stitch it all together and make one big movie. And I said, that's great, but who's going to write it and how are you going to be able to follow the characters? Why don't we just remake an existing movie and like an iconic one so that it's easy to follow because everybody knows the movie. And so what we landed on was a shot-for-shot remake of Back to the Future Part 2, done by, it ended up being 300-something people from 13 countries around the world.
Wow.
When it was one of the very early on pandemic internet collaborations. Like now it's very commonplace. We all participate in these group projects. You and I have done a few.
Yep.
And it's become like the norm. This is how we socially interact. Like, oh, we're going to all get together and do this thing. But at that time, it was kind of a new and exciting idea. We got a lot of press and stuff, but it's basically just a fan remake of Back to the Future 2, but quarantined. So you have a lot of, little kids dressing up as Doc and Marty McFly, or you have people dressing their cats up. One scene, somebody used bananas as puppets. So there's every different type of thing. And there's some like amazing animated segments that professional animators did because they weren't working either. And we got the range is crazy. There's like amazing professional filmmakers doing high level, amazing work. And then there's like 9-year-olds with their iPad who also did a scene and they're back to back. And I think that's kind of what's great about it. But what really was cool that came out of it is it was a very scary time for a lot of people. And it gave people something hopeful, something fun to do. And we heard from a lot of families after of like, this was the one thing that we could all get together and do that was fun and kind of hopeful, when otherwise, the news was just about how many people died that day and how many people were sick, which is still happening, but we've become kind of desensitized to that. But it was, when it first hit, it was very scary. And my default mode is like, I'm not a doctor. I can't help people, but I can help distract. I can maybe make people laugh when everything sucks.
Well, you accomplished that, sir. That was
Thank you.
It was a feat. I'm sure the editing alone would be crazy. So like, I really wish I wouldn't have missed the boat. Like, what was the process for getting the word out that you needed footage for this?
I split the movie into 88 chunks because 88 miles an hour. And I thought, I have enough Facebook friends and Instagram friends where I'm like, I think I know 88 people who will do, it's basically a minute each one. This movie's like 90 minutes and change. So I had these all split up, and I bought a .com because I'm an old person who thinks that's how the internet works. I put up all these things, and I put up a sign up form, and people could pick their top 3. And I didn't have a spreadsheet or anything. I was manually going like, okay, 2 people wanted that same scene, but who asked first? And then, oh, their backup is still available. We'll give them that one.
Oh my goodness.
And I was, making these documents and divvying up these scenes. And it started just with like my Facebook friends and other filmmakers that I knew. And we got about half the scenes claimed that way. And then I wanted to get it done. I'm not a very patient person. So I posted it in like a Back to the Future fan group, or like a fan Facebook group, and a prop making group of like, who doesn't want to make a flux capacitor or a hoverboard for fun? So that's how it became international. It was mostly people I knew personally or people in Bend, Oregon at the beginning. And then, the last half, the other 45 scenes were people I'd never met. Now we're friends, we bonded over this thing, and I've made some great friends from it, but it kind of spread. And then like once all the scenes were claimed, we had people on a waiting list, and people wouldn't finish. And it became my job to like, okay, this person's clearly not responding to emails. They're not going to finish. Let's give their scene away. And then for a couple of scenes, that person who never answered would submit their scene. And then this other person also did it. So I had to figure out how to merge them. It was a whole thing. And it was a lot of work, but it was a lot of fun. And it kept me really busy when I was otherwise having panic attacks and depression. And, it was not a good time for anybody. But if I could focus on Back to the Future, then it was okay. So that was a pretty great thing. But yeah, it was all through Facebook that we found all the people, and it kind of spread from like my circle to then friends of friends to then the global Back to the Future fan community.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I remember. I'm almost positive it was on Good Morning America. That's how I found out about it. That it kind of made the news. But I have watched parts of it. I haven't been able to make it all the way through.
That's fine. It's not really for that. We did like a live watch party when it came out, and it was a lot of fun, but it's a lot for one sitting of and there's some amazing clips in there. It's fun to jump around, I think, and just watch a few seconds of each, because a minute doesn't sound like that much, but if you're not digging the style or the audio's not great or whatever, it's a long time.
Yeah. So what are you working on? Anything interesting new that is coming down the pipe that you can actually talk about that you want to?
Not really. It's been a pretty rough year, and I wasn't able to do the work that I would have wanted to do. So it's for the first time in a very long time, I don't have like a next big focus. I worked on a feature that I don't know what it's going to be called, but I helped with the story and I edited a lot of it, and that'll probably come out this year. I'm helping produce another documentary that somebody else is making, but nothing like,
Well, the next big idea is out there.
Yeah. And everybody has been very kind, and I've gotten hundreds of emails that say, it would make a good documentary. Yep. And I don't mind, keep them coming. If your uncle invented the spoon, let's make that movie. I don't care.
This happened.
I think the person who invented the spoon has been dead for a very long time.
Yeah, Mr. William Spoon.
William Spoon.
Yep.
Yeah.
Another cool count. Now, you got to do a little bit of musical collaboration. And so we were co-collaborators very recently, actually this week.
Yeah, we're all dudes.
We're all dudes. So the NPC group, if you have seen on social media, NPCs, the non-playable characters, have done a few really huge collaborations in the spirit of Project 88, just getting musicians to kind of contribute these massive song like covers that are done by just like 50 people, all types of instrumentation, tons of vocals. And so they just released this week We're All Dudes from Good Burger.
Yeah.
And I think it's should have wrote that down, because what it's benefiting, I'll have to look it up real quick. I should have known that part.
Yeah, I know it's for charity.
Yeah.
And it's important. I mean, it's a little bit tricky. I know dudes can be a problematic term, and it's like Pride Month, and we're trying to be, and there's like too many white dudes in the video, and that's partly my fault. But
well, I'm Latino, so
there you go.
Fortunately, I didn't.
That's helpful.
Yeah, I was contributing.
But no, I know, as a group, the heart is in the right place, and it's definitely trying to do good. But it is funny, I've heard from people that are like, that song, I just don't know. It's I don't think it's anybody's favorite Less Than Jake song by a mile.
But you know what? If you watch Good Burger, it's very nostalgic.
Very strong. And the fact that we got Kel in there, like, that's amazing.
And that was from a cameo video. He did a great job of inserting him the right way, because I don't think Kel was like had the tune and was singing to it.
No, he just freestyled all of that.
Yeah,
it was very cool. It was a lot better than when we got Tony Hawk to be in the Superman one, and he just did a kickflip.
Which it like, I think Josh he was like moving heaven and earth to try to even get a hold of Tony Hawk to try to.
That was a cameo too, but it was much more expensive, I think.
Yeah, I bet.
It ended up being like 5 seconds.
So they're currently fundraising for the Trevor Project.
Oh, good.
So,
I don't know how like these YouTube videos raise funds. Do we accept donations?
I believe that there is.
Maybe you can buy it on Bandcamp.
Links. Probably, maybe, I don't know, but I'm sure.
What happens when you
all I know is that
people? We don't know.
We don't know. I was barbecuing meat when I recorded my video. That's like, I was trying to think of all these cool things I could do, and at the end of the day, I just had a big slab of meat. I was like, oh, I'll just barbecue while I do my thing, and that's what you get. You got Johnny Bravo, and then did you play trumpet on it too, or were you just? Oh.
Yeah, I did trumpet. I think I was the first horn player to track for that one, because I didn't have a guide to follow along to. I was just doing it based off the original. So I don't know if any of my track actually made it. My timing might have been way off.
I'll tell you more about that later. Not the trumpet, but so you reminded me of something else.
Gotcha.
So do you keep your chops up with the trumpet nowadays?
I try to, and I do record now and then for friends or for people, if somebody needs a trumpet track, I'm set up to record, and it's a bummer not playing in a band, and I haven't for a while. It's been about 5 years, and I was playing super regularly in DC. I was in a band called Party Like It's, and we were a ska cover band.
Yeah.
Like a working cover band. We were playing 4-hour sets, 2 nights.
I didn't know you were in that band.
Yep.
Oh, right.
And so my chops were like the best they've ever been. I've never been able to play 4-hour sets 2 days in a row. And then, now I pick up my horn, and playing 3 songs is a challenge. It's a bummer.
Yeah, that one, I mean, playing horns, you got to really like stay on it or you lose your lip, right?
Yeah. It's really a weird feeling because mentally it's all still there. Like I should be able to do this. I have been able to do this in the past. And if I play for like a week, I can get back up, but I usually don't. I usually pick it up and play for a day, then put it back down. I do one of these NPC things. Takes me all day because I'm so out of shape, and then I don't play for a month.
Gotcha. What bands have you been in? Jeremy was asking, what bands were you in?
Ska bands. I've been in. Let me do this chronologically so I don't forget. I was in a band called 007, a band called the Lounge Derbies, a band called Pocket Face, the Vericoasters, Miami Airlines, the Shifters, and Party Like It's. I think are all
Dang, you were in the Shifters too?
Yeah.
Did we play together? Wait, what year? How long have you been back in Oregon?
I think the Shifters broke up. If there was a trumpet player, it was me. They never had another trumpet.
Because did you play Tropicalia with Rude King?
Yeah, probably. Played the Tropicalia a lot.
With so the band I was touring with was Rude King, and we played with the Shifters.
That sounds super familiar.
I'll have to go back and look at what year that was. But
yeah, I'm pretty positive I was there. There was a brief period where I wasn't in the band. Like I had a hiatus, but I'm pretty sure I was there.
Huh. That's cool. It would have been like maybe 2015, 2000. I have to look back. Anyway, I can ask you about that later. I just forgot about the live show. I'm like, wait.
Those were all my ska bands, and I played in a bunch of other, when trumpet became really uncool in the early 2000s, I picked up a guitar and started playing punk rock, and had a Casio new wave rock band for a little while, and played a bunch of things, but those were
very cool.
Those were my ska bands over the years.
Nice. And what kind of bands are you listening to these days?
Man, I go through phases where I don't even listen to music at all, and I'm just now getting back into music. Like I get burnt out, and then I'm like only want to listen to stuff from when I was a kid, but now I'm listening to some stuff, but it's not even as much bands, it's more genres and styles, but I try to keep up. I've been getting into vinyl, and I have the new We Are the Union record right next to my turntable ready to listen to, but I want to give it the time that it deserves. And I love all the new bands that are coming out and playing. Catbite is great. I like Bite Me Bambi. I like We Are the Union. I've been listening to them since their first EP, God, a million years ago. And that was in like the void time when I couldn't find new bands. I was so excited. I think I was playing in the Shifters, and I was like, you guys, ska punk is back. They're like, no. Only Rocksteady. We're doing Rocksteady now.
Oh, Duncan. That sounds like Duncan.
Yeah. But yeah, I just listened to the new Boss Tones record the other day. It's been a good year for nostalgic, the new Goldfinger, the new Less Than Jake, the new Boss Tones.
That's something.
For people like me that can't get over the 90s, it's been a good influx of new stuff from old bands.
Yeah, apparently.
Podcasts and the radio, like a weirdo.
And the debate rages on about new tone ska or fourth wave ska or label, whatever label you're trying to put on ska right now.
Cares? Labels are dumb.
I know. It's a lot of fun for Facebook debates, though. It gives people.
Yeah, Facebook loves to fight about things that are not important. They love to fight about important things too, but
yes,
they also love to argue about
a lot of fighting. Yeah, there's a lot of fighting going on there.
Yes.
All right, Taylor. I want to thank you so much, and we had so much to talk about that we ran a little bit over an hour, but that is just fine with me. I'll talk as long as you'll talk about ska music. And I want to thank you for coming on tonight, giving us kind of some cool insight into how you made that movie, and as well as your other projects that you've been involved in. And next week we have Chris Borobon, and he is the drummer from the Capsules out in Bakersfield. He also plays with the Rhythm Ambassadors, and he plays with Jackie Mendez. And so he is, I'm burying the lead. He also plays with me. And guess what, guys? I got the test pressing.
Ooh.
Came in the mail today. So this is, we'll have a solid release date very soon for the vinyl. It's coming out on Jump Up Records.
Nice.
So, yeah, we're going to have Chris on the show. And if you got to check this guy out, he's just an amazing ska drummer. He's got that Lloyd Knibb drumming pocket just down to perfection. He could play all the styles. So, and he's also an amazing artist. He did the art.
That's awesome
for this upcoming album from Mr. Kingpin. So,
man, that looks great.
We'll have a lot to talk about next week.
How'd you get art on your test press?
Well, because Chuck Wren already had made the covers.
Gotcha.
So
nice.
he just sent me a couple covers with the test presses. Yeah, I know that's not a typical thing. But
yeah, it's like, wow, that test press looks amazing. It just looks like a finished product.
He's just saving shipping. All right. So thank you guys for joining us. Remember to like and share the video and pass it on to all your ska-loving friends. And we'll see you again next week. We'll talk to you guys later. Thanks. Bye.